Welcome to Radio Murchie's Leaders and Legends. This is Councilmember Steve Rao. I'm a host of the show, and I'm here today for a special 9/11 edition. I want to thank everyone for listening to the Triangle Region's largest radio station. And today we have some very special guests as we remember 9/11. And the first 12 minutes or so will be a radio interview live, and then we're going to go into a little bit of a virtual town hall with our Morrisville residents through Facebook and different mediums. So we have with us today my friend and colleague on the town of Morrisville, our fire chief, Scott Criddle, and we're going to be joined soon with Jerry McCormick, who was a former captain in the police department. So Chief Criddle, welcome to the show, and thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, thanks for all that you do. Tell us a little bit about your background. How long have you been a firefighter? And I know you've been the chief now for over a year and a half, right? 2 years?
Yep.
Okay.
About a year and a half, yep.
Okay, great. So did you always know you wanted to be a firefighter, or tell us a little bit about your background?
No, I've been framing houses with my dad. I worked for my dad in New York, upstate New York, since I was knee high. And I guess I framed my first house without adult supervision at 16. I came down here in North Carolina because the building market was better, and I framed houses, met a volunteer firefighter, said, hey, you should come join the fire department. I'd never gave it a thought. And then I walked in the doors here in early 1995, and I took opportunity to go career in 99 when we first opened our first 24-hour staffing at Station 1, and I've never looked back.
Wow. And then you came in as a volunteer firefighter, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Came in as a volunteer, worked your way up the ranks, and then became a fire chief. So we were so proud of you. That was a great moment. I'm wearing my fireman's shirt here.
Yeah.
60th anniversary. So let's talk a little bit about, and Jerry's going to be joining us in a minute. Let's talk a little bit about 9/11, a day that will live on in infamy in the country, in the world. 377 first responders, firefighters died, many police officers. What does this day, where were you when it happened? And what did it do to you then, just in terms of just your thoughts of America?
Yeah, I think everybody my age, I think, will remember where they were when 9/11 happened. I was on a job site, and I guess we were framing with about 10 to 15 guys on the crew, and we listened to the radio every day. And they broke in with a plane that hit the first building, and when you think of that and you don't have perspective, you think, well, maybe some guy in a Cessna had misnavigated and hit the building, and then the first thoughts are maybe, hey, I feel bad for all those poor people on the ground below all that debris falling, that has to be terrible. And then because you're listening to it on the radio, not seeing it on the TV when you're on a job site. So we took our morning break and we're listening to the radio on the way to morning break. And then that's when they broke in and said that a second plane had hit the other one. And then it became a little bit more real. They started explaining the size of the plane and the scope. And I remember getting off of the break, and all the guys were so glued to the radio. They just could not do work. And when you're doing framing, it's all about work. So we weren't able to get work done. So we turned everybody loose for the day, picked up the tools. And I remember I got home around 10 something, and in time to see one of the buildings fall. And it was just, it was awful. I mean, you just don't have an idea of the scope until you get it in a picture. They can say it on the radio as much as they want, but that visual was all you needed to bring the reality, to your door.
Yeah. I mean, it just, and do you think that, you then became a firefighter, and when that happened and we saw these heroes just lose their lives saving others, and we thank everyone out there that's a firefighter, first responder, police officer, how do you think that affected the careers of firefighters? I mean, we already knew most people could just, when I was a kid playing, we wanted to be a fireman. There was a show, can't remember what it was about firemen.
Emergency.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think it affected the profession? Obviously it did, but how did it affect just firefighters around the country watching this.
Oh yeah, I was on a construction site when it happened, but I was already full-time fireman here in Morrisville. I was working on my days off, framing at that point, and knowing that there was a ton of firemen, especially in the first building, I believe most of those firefighters probably charged into that thinking that they were going to go do business like they do a lot. I mean, they probably looked up at the height of it and thought, wow, that's a lot of stairs to handle. But I think they charged in there. I think when that first building come down, that's about all I could think of. I mean, it was hard to see all those people, but it was really hard to think of if those guys have been successful, those guys and gals have been successful, they probably got several people out, and they probably weren't expecting that one to come down. But after the second one come down, the other group in the other building had to hear the news. They had to be working extra fast, trying to save as many as they could. They had to know they were in a bad spot. I mean, I don't want to guess on what any of those individuals were thinking, but I know personally as a firefighter, a career firefighter, when it happened, watching it, it was hard for that not to dominate your thoughts. And it was hard not to feel bad that was what was dominating our thoughts, at least mine.
Yeah. Jerry McCormick is going to be joining, folks. He's got some technical difficulties. So Ian, I've asked him to, for those listening, we're waiting for him. But we got Chief Criddle here. So do you think that we're doing, how can we as a community show firefighters that we appreciate them?
We get a lot of that. When we're out in the public, we get people that say, they appreciate what we do, or, that. And I think we feel appreciated for the most part. I mean, I can't speak for the law enforcement community, but the fire service community, we feel pretty well, regarded where we go. People are really kind to us. I feel well supported here in town. So from my perspective, I feel appreciated. The thing about it is, most of the folks that are doing the fire department job, they do it because they love to do it. It's an exciting job. It's different every day. It's not necessarily, well, I mean, here I sit in my office now, but I was on a truck for a long time, and you just didn't do that office life. You went in, you put your gear on a truck, you ran some emergencies. Typically when you arrive somewhere, things were in chaos, and you make it better, and that is gratifying. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, it is a great job. So we feel appreciated pretty well, I'd say, in the fire service side of it most of the time.
Okay, great. Well, we have Jerry McCormick. Welcome, sir.
Hey.
I'm
sorry, I had a little bit of
it happens. We were Chief Criddle here from Morrisville, and we got about 5 minutes on the radio, but we're going to continue for another 30 minutes with the town hall. So I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Chief Criddle. Where were you when 9/11 happened, and how did that affect your perspective as a law enforcement officer? And you served in Cary PD for how many years?
21. I was 30 years law enforcement, 21 with the Cary.
Wow. And you're now also a businessman. You've got a company called Personal Safety, right?
Yes, I travel around the world talking about safety with people, employees. But, when I was at Davis Drive Middle School, it was really a school resource officer at the time. And it was very different time because, when we woke up and we saw this, I don't know, unimaginable tragedy happening. Even in Cary, North Carolina, we had parents coming to getting kids and like, oh my God, we get them out of schools and is so unsafe. So to watch that happen with, I don't know, with Cary PD and Cary, North Carolina, it just seems weird because, I mean, we weren't in New York. The towers didn't fall in New York, or they fell in New York. They didn't fall in Cary or in Morrisville. And to watch that happen was just unimaginable. So I don't know. It was just this place where, like, when you think about that happening, I'm not sure you guys know, but for the first 48 hours, they had no communication. So they did runners. They ran for a 16-block area. They ran from corner to corner, giving information to leaders. It was sort of like the old days, like we're talking about before we had radios. was this messenger service. And then so like, if you think about what we did in Cary, North Carolina, and what we did in the nation, is we just were shocked. So, I mean, I'm so proud of our first responders for understanding that we had to think about it a different way. But at the same time, I was shocked by
And that's what we're
such sadness, because we all know somebody who died there. Every one of us do. Even if you don't know somebody you know knows somebody who died there. And it's just this unimaginable tragedy. So.
Yeah. In our second half of the program, we're going to talk a little bit more about what we can learn from 9/11 and teach our kids and children, and talk a little bit about just where we go from here. A lot of stuff going on in America. What I guess we're going to end our last question on the radio with, we want to thank you all for your service and what you do. What is the one thing about when you were a firefighter and then you become the chief, and then you've been a police officer? What were like the top things about your jobs that you loved? Like just 2 or 3 things that you can think of that you really liked about being, because you're in a job with a lot of risk, a lot of danger, and there has to be something that's getting you to put that uniform on every day to go. What is that?
I went to training and I got inside that first structure fire and I fell for it. It was exciting. And I don't want to sound like too much of an adrenaline junkie, but that's what I did. I enjoyed going to do those risky things with the idea that if you took enough training or trained hard enough at it, you could manage most of the situations you end up with fire. So it was exciting.
Just exciting and making a difference. And I like the sense of family that I see in our fire department in Morrisville. Just such a great sense of family and camaraderie. I dropped some food off today for lunch. I actually had a run this morning with 2 firefighters, and just feel it's just such a great feeling whenever I'm with that department. And police officers as well. Jerry, I guess the same thing, right? I mean, just a sense of duty, sense of helping our community.
I think Chief Criddle gets it better than I do. Mine was more about. I felt like there's a loss between the hardships my family had and what a police officer does, and that's why I'm a police officer, because I really felt I had some bigger call of duty. Chief Criddle is a much better public servant than I, because mine was I just didn't feel safe. I just didn't, and I decided I was going to make a career choice over making sure people felt more safe than they did.
I think that's a great reason. I think that's the best reason to be a cop. That's awesome.
Yes, sir. That's exactly why I did it, actually, because we had shootings and violence around when I was a child, and I just was like, my mom married a bank robber. It was just this really wild. I didn't talk about it actually until about 4 years ago, because it wasn't going to be an excuse to me, but I just loved helping people not be a victim of a crime. And so now, and when I travel around the world, it's really about this place of not being a victim of a crime. Yeah. And if I can help you not be a victim of a crime, that's really where I am. And then there's 6 reasons. So anyway, it's not for this one, but anyway, but that's why I do what I do, because I love helping people not be a victim of crime.
Well, we want to thank Radio Murchie for covering. First of all, we want to thank both of you listening and everyone listening on the radio to these great Americans that are serving our fire and our police. And we're going to bring them both back again for another edition where we can maybe dive in a little more detail. But we want to thank Radio Murchie for broadcasting this live today. This was aired all over the Triangle and even in some different cities in the U.S. And we want to take this moment to thank every first responder, police officer, volunteer that does what they do, and also for what they've done during the 9/11. And we're going to now go into our Facebook Live virtual town hall. So it's sort of like Act 2. So I want to thank the radio for broadcasting us, and we'll be back again in a little while for an interview about from the U.S. Open tennis tournament with Andy Andrews. But thank you, Murchie. And now, Ian, we're gonna go ahead and take it to Facebook, begin the countdown, and then we've got a formal program. It'll be about 30 minutes for the citizens of Morrisville and the region. So be patient. Thank you, Murchie. Back next week, and stay safe out there, everybody. And remember, get your absentee ballot request forms in, okay, because the mail's going to be slow. And they said this virus may last for a little while longer than we thought.
I think it's gonna last a little while.
Oh, we're now streaming on Facebook. Okay,
No, not yet. Almost.
almost.
Give me a second. It said it's making the connection. Okay, looks like it made it.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody. This is Steve Rao, and we're here for our virtual town hall with Chief of Fire of Morrisville Fire Department, Scott Criddle, and former police captain in the town of Cary for 31 years, Jerry McCormick, who's also now a businessman. And we're honored, gentlemen, to have you. And before I hand it over for some introductions to our community listening, I just wanted to take a moment to, first of all, read a quote from Robert F. Kennedy when Martin Luther King was assassinated on Aeschylus. And it says, "Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair against our will comes wisdom through the awful grace of God." And that brings tears to my eyes almost when I think about 9/11, and we saw the World Trade Towers crumble right before our eyes, and the ashes on the ground, 377 firefighters and first responders who lost their lives. Like my late father-in-law reminded me, all of the men and women of the armed forces who went to Afghanistan and lost their lives fighting wars. And so we want to remember them today. And we want to have a discussion of 9/11 with these heroes, our fire chief, and Jerry McCormick. So before we begin, I'm going to ask us to have a moment of silence, and we're going to play taps to honor those fallen first responders, firefighters, and the fallen soldiers of the United States who served in many of the wars after 9/11, defending the freedom of this great nation. Thank you for being there with us for that somber moment. But we had to do it because, and before we hand it off to Chief Criddle, it's that the pain and we felt, but we saw wisdom in the awful grace of God, which I was actually running with one of our firefighters, and today we were trying to interpret what Aeschylus meant by that quote. Maybe he meant the awesome grace of God, but we did see grace of God in the many, many firefighters who gave their lives. So I'm going to ask you both this question in this town hall. We really want to make this more of a discussion for our community rather than just the fundamentals of firefighting and police officers, but 9/11 and what it meant to our country and what does remembering this event mean for our future. So I'm going to start with Chief Criddle to just give a little perspective of what you think 9/11 meant to our country then, and what do you think it means today to those people that wear the uniform and go out and fight fires for Morrisville and Cary and all around the state in the United States?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just from my perspective, I mean, I was relatively young when that happened, and seeing us get hit in that way just kind of brought home the fact that we could be hit, we could be struck, you know. So that was one of the things just on a global scale. And this just from the firefighters' perspective, you know, just seeing the number of firefighters that could be taken down at one time, that was never thought of before. You know, firefighters, police, EMS, I mean, there's a lot of people that were, you know, probably a lot of well-wishing citizens trying to do the right thing went down in that. And I just don't think anybody imagined the building coming down, you know, especially the first one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it felt vulnerable.
How about you, Jerry?
Well, you know, I remember that day because I was a school resource officer at Davis Stroud Middle School. And I recall the time where we were directed to stay at intersections. And we wanted this police presence and fire presence so that the people knew that we were there for them. But when the towers fell, we had so many parents come get the kids. And it was just unbelievably sad time. And yet I look at the resilience of those that were there, and I'm proud. I mean, you know, when you have two jet airliners hit a building and fall in a 16 block area, basically, and I'm not sure if I said this earlier, but it's these, they had to create a messenger service. I'm not sure if you guys know this or not, but they had to create this. They were so resilient. I'm so proud of them because they were so resilient in the loss of their friends. Because you guys know, I know you guys, I don't know Chief Criddle very well, but Steve, you know, I know you very well, and I know Satish and the council very well. We've done many events together. To have one of you guys lost is so emotionally ripping, and yet the resilience of this community, and the fact that they found a way. They had this messenger service because basically what turned out was 16 blocks, and every corner they had a communications person. And they sent these messengers around. So when I became part of the Raleigh capital area incident management team, we had this training and we met these people who were there that did it. Like they lived every day at that moment for about 4 weeks. So I guess, Steve, I'll leave you with this point that this incredibly tragic, and I've been to the memorial. I've been to the center to talk about it. I'm not sure if you guys saw last week on 60 Minutes, there's a Greek Orthodox church that was destroyed during 9/11, and they were talking about it in 60 Minutes last week. So, I mean, it's such a heart-wrenching situation, but at the same time, I look the American resilience to come out of it.
And that's a great follow-up to the next question, and this is just flowing so well, and this is more of an informal discussion, but and to people are chiming in, so we probably will have some questions on Facebook about fire, about police, and maybe about safety. We have about 25 more minutes, but 20 more minutes, but so let's talk about resilience, and I guess this is the question I'll ask both of you just to get a perspective, and I'm going to chime in as well. One moment that really came out to me was when President George W. Bush was on the ground zero with the microphone, and he says, "I hear you, we hear you, the entire world hears you." And we saw the president go quite emotional, and but also the world saw this country rebuild and regroup, and in a way that we've never seen before. And I guess my question is, how can we're now in a tough time. I mean, with a global pandemic, economic chaos, political division, the police incidents that have been happening around the country, political division. And I actually started thinking about this. It gave me a little hope thinking about the fact that if we could rebuild from 9/11 as Americans, we can retool ourselves now and get through this crisis. So don't you think there's some message there that we need to be looking at? Because it's hard, especially in an election season where we're looking like 5 weeks out. Who's going to be the next president? Who's going to be in office? Just an open-ended conversation. You don't have to directly answer my question.
I will directly answer. I think
thoughts are.
there's just no quit. you know, you don't have a choice. You know, the situation is going to happen. You're going to do the best you can to manage it. But at the end of the day, you still got to get up and you got to go to do it tomorrow. You know,
Yep.
we're not going to quit. We're going to keep on keeping on, and we're going to face what we got to face, and we're going to do the best job we can collectively to manage it. And then we're going to roll on. I mean, it's terrible things happen. Terrible things happen on small scales to people that are very close to them, and it's huge to them at the moment. And this just happens to be big to a lot of people right now. But we're going to keep on going.
Okay. That's
Yeah, I actually think that Chief Criddle has it right. The idea is we have to take the next step and the next step and the next step, because in public safety, a lot of things you're seeing on a national scale, we see every day. So to us, this is not responding to something that's not, I don't know, bigger than us. So Chief Criddle has probably, 10 officers, 10 firefighters that have dealt with life-saving moments yesterday. It wasn't like we do it every single day. In the 30 years I did my law enforcement career, it wasn't a time when I thought, well, gee whiz, I'm not sure how I'm going to deal with tomorrow, because I was more, my intention was, how can I deal with today? And the things that go on every day in somebody's public safety life, it's just, I mean, I get that it's emotional. And when you see it on TV or you see it on the news, and it's this, I don't know, it seems like it's like, I can't believe that just happened. We have that every day. It's like every day something happens that you're going like, I really wish I didn't have to experience that. So
Yeah.
I applaud most public safety employees for, just putting up with every day, because it's just,
it's a grind.
it's of such a love affair with the work we do. I love my 30 years. I'm really glad I'm not there now and I'm retired. Let me be clear on that, but I loved every day I went to work, because I knew something was going to happen that was going to impact somebody else's life. And so if you go back to Mr. Floyd, or you go to whatever the current day conversation is, no one approves of bad behavior, but we know we have to give public safety first. My son's a firefighter, so Chief, I will apply what you do, because there's no way in heck I'm going to go into a burning building looking for a bad person. But I want to say that, I love my job, but it's not pretty. So Steve, Councilman, I really appreciate you having this conversation about 9/11, because whether it's a Greek Orthodox church that was destroyed, they're trying to rebuild, which I never knew was next to 9/11. I've been to those towers. I never knew that. I never knew that existed. Or if it's with your team firefighters, or the police that were lost, or the people that built the 3,000 people that were lost in those two buildings. It's excruciating to think about the loss.
I know. My wife.
And then it's empowering, though, Steve, it's empowering to think about the resilience of the people that came out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just had a question came in from Facebook. This was makes it fun. It's really interactive, so you're not bored with my question all the time. This is you, Chief Criddle, from John White. He wants to know where you were on 9/11.
Yeah.
And Jerry, the same question for you. Well, we already know Jerry was a Davis driver.
Yeah.
I was at Davis Drive Middle School.
I know Captain John White, and I will answer his question. I was on a construction site doing double duty. Days off from the fire department, I was on a construction site, and what I felt when I got a chance to get off the construction site and get home, because we sent everybody home, was just the terror of watching that building come down on all those people.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
It's sombering.
Everyone wants to thank you all for your service. Let's talk. I want to talk about the diversity we see in Morrisville, but before we do that, Chief, why don't we talk real quickly about the 5K that we had last year for a couple years. That was really a wonderful event. People are really bummed out this year. They're emailing me, gosh, what happened? Couldn't do it. what brought that about? That was like we started the 5K and then we would honor the fallen firefighters and police, and then you would run in uniform, right?
Yeah, we didn't start that. We followed somebody else's suit. What they did was a simulated 110-story climb on 9/11 to commemorate the climb up the towers that the rescuers or the would-be rescuers made. And not too long after they started that elsewhere, we fell in and we used the One Copley Parkway building. They allowed us to go over there, and we did an inside-outside course. So we went up to 6 stories, down the 6 stories, and we went out in the parking lot. We did it, and we encourage anybody who's willing to do it physically to do it. We highly encourage the firefighters to get dressed up and put the gear on, grab a tool, act like those folks did, because it's one thing to go climb 100 stairs. I mean, go to the gym and realize that Stairmaster you're on probably counts, I don't know, maybe every 10 steps as a flight, but in the World Trade Center it was probably more like 14 to 20 steps per flight. And then
That's right.
wear 70 pounds of gear and carry a 10-pound tool and see what that feels like. Do that 100 times. So trying to simulate that. They do other runs. I think someone locally does a local 5K that is point to point, that's meant to simulate that energy or output level, but it's really just to keep it fresh in your mind. And as you can see, when I do it, I try to do it in full gear just to torture myself a little bit, keep it
Cary, this question is for you, and then we have a couple of logistics questions about we have a few more minutes. Thank you for your patience.
Sure.
I'm really enjoying this interview. I'm actually starting to wake up. This is great. I've been really tired today.
I've had a really long day. I'll be honest with you. I've been in meetings since 8 o'clock, and my clients from around the world. It's just been a really interesting, exhausting day, to be frank with you. But you know what? 9/11 commemoration with Chief Criddle and you is just so important that we don't forget. So what's your question, sir? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so my question, this is a sort of how you got into safety, a little bit about how you got into a business running a safety, but we're going to bring you back for another show on that. But how did you retire and then jump right into becoming a business person?
Well, the interesting part came when my mom ended up marrying a bank robber. Just it's a whole thing, but anyway, shootings and violence were part of my past. And literally, I never talked about it until about 3 years before I retired from Cary. So my friends, my closest friend knew about it, and then now I talk about it more openly, just because your past doesn't have to define you. So that's what I did. But then when Columbine High School happened, I became a police officer, and when Columbine High School happened, it was just this shooting that it made no sense to me, because they surround and contain waivers. Like, no, we need to go in. And then we started working on active shooter training in 1999. And I mean, as Chief Criddle and I know, the active shooter training really is about going in and to stop the threat. It's how do you provide care? How do you get people out for a higher level of care? It's not anything about any individual business. So, and then I was like, okay, well, how about so everybody started asking about my research, and then an active shooter, I looked at 327 cases. I went and interviewed active shooters in jail, and there were people started asking me about it. And then it was like this whole idea that, cops aren't victims of crime. Why don't I just show you how to be an off-duty cop? And I've interviewed 9,500 police officers in America, Europe, and China, where I have 7 schools that are my clients. And it was this idea that we don't have to be victims of crime, and we can avoid it in these 6 ways. So you know what, Steve, I appreciate you letting me be on your show today, because at the bottom line, if you know that you cannot be a victim of a crime, and there's some simple steps to do that, what's the incident? What are your action steps? How do you respond physiologically? Like we go with Chief Criddle. Chief, you had to go into a burning building blindfolded in your training to find some lost person. It was an object, it wasn't a person, but I'm not doing that. It's just not happening. I don't want to do it. But what Chief Criddle's staff did and what we did as law enforcement, there's a way we can go about avoiding being a victim of crime. So I've enjoyed that. I just picked up a new school in Saudi Arabia. It's just this idea that we want our friends to be safe. How can we do that? And then the process is these things.
Well, that's great. Chief Criddle, what is the greatest we just had a question come in, we got about 10 more minutes. What is the greatest, the most common fire hazard that you see for a typical person in a house that you think that could start a fire?
Well, the statistics don't lie. Year after year, we have two causes that will generally chase each other around. One is improperly disposed of smoking materials, and the other one is kitchen fires. So cooking accidents and improperly disposed of smoking materials are always leading the way for cause of fire.
And a follow-up question to that was, you merged the 911 with Cary. Has that worked well for Morrisville and Cary? Do you feel like it's reduced response times and things like that?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's good news. Yeah, and that's one thing to people to understand, which a lot of people don't understand. Cary and Morrisville Police, Cary and Morrisville Fire work very closely together.
Very close.
Yeah, and I just want to say that for people listening. So, when and I learned this from Chief Criddle, and some people I've talked to, but when there's a fire, let's say here at Ridgemont where I live, that doesn't necessarily mean that the fire trucks from Fire Station 1, even though it's 1 mile from my house, are going to come here, because they may be another call. So it could be a Cary unit, right? That's the way fire response works. And that's something a lot of people don't understand. So they go, well, let's just build a fire station where the most people live, but it's about where we can get it. And I guess the same thing is for police as well. So a lot of times we'll see Cary police here, we'll see more police in Cary, right? It's a joint kind of.
It's the way our radio system works. So around 9 years ago, we bought our own system, Cary, and the way we communicate with that radio system and the way we do our dispatching, it is absolutely interchanged. So you get a really robust, we are not the same police and fire department specifically, but organically the response happens is in what you're saying, Councilman, is it works very much like it's the same police department or same fire department, because we are going to support you. Like Fire Station 7 has Morrisville Fire and Cary Fire in it. So we're going to work very closely together to respond to you. Of course, I'm retired, so I'm not going to, but our organizations will. And the good chief of Morrisville is going to do the same thing. We just want to help people. And how we do that and how we respond quickly, it's not about what city we're in, it's about how we can help people.
Okay, great. Well, let's get back to the 9/11 theme in the last few minutes. So what do you all, and Jerry, thank you so much for that answer. So, as we face division and we face political discourse and just everything going on, I guess, what advice do you have to our leaders about this whole idea that we're stronger together? Is it just telling our children and our grandchildren that we can get through this? How do we keep that positive frame of mind? Because I'm seeing now that we are on 7 months of staying at home and not being able to see people are really starting to get tired. And, I guess you don't have an answer for the question, but you're leaders in our community. And I think it'd be helpful for us, just for you to give some guidance of how you guys are getting through the tough days and how do we remember what we're doing here.
I'm going to leave that to Chief Criddle first.
Yeah, well, Chief, thanks. And Fire Chief, came up by being good at, pulling hoses and training with people and, trying to solve small problems. Some people thought they were big problems, but, I don't know. You want me to solve, come up with a silver bullet. I'm obviously not the one, but I would say the art of compromise, man. We can't lose the art of compromise. We got to figure out a way to get to the right thing.
Yes.
Well,
Absolutely.
I think Chief Criddle's point is well made in that what's the root of the problem? And what we as law enforcement and fire and public servants can do, and even you, Councilman Rao, is that we have an opportunity to serve. And I did this interview with Kata Rave. I'm not sure you guys know her, but the idea is that how do we deal with this really divisive time right now? And really the idea is that we can serve. Like you as a council member Chief as a firefighter and myself as a public servant. I'm still a public servant because I still teach people how not to be a victim of crime, no matter where that is. And the idea that we can serve in this time, in this day, is first is just unpleasant. Let me just say it. I think it's unpleasant. But also, we have a chance to lead. And I think your show today, sir, is a testament to leading. And the fire chief is going to be, I mean, we still have to put out fires. My son is a firefighter in New Bern. And I listen to him talk about his daily routine, which sounds unbelievably boring to me. But anyway, nonetheless, it's this great time. But, you know, we can lead. And, you know, you putting this show today on about it, reflecting about 9/11 is just another part of leading. While I'm excruciatingly tired right this moment, I can tell you that I am so proud for my 30 years of law enforcement, as the chief is about his in fire service, because we help people feel secure. And that safety and security it's hard to match. It's just this thing that when I see a fire truck coming down the road, I don't think I fear, I think safety. I think those guys are there to make me safe. There's a reason they're there. Now, I might be abundantly curious about why they're there, but they're there, and they're for my safety. So when I see a police or firefighter, I don't think fear, but unfortunately this day and time, some of the riots in different cities, as I told you off air, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just going to leave it at, I'm so proud of our police and fire service, and that's where I stand.
My last question to both of you, just two questions, and I'll let you guys go. And I really appreciate you taking the time. Is how do you both define? Well, the first question is, I mean, do you learn a lot by being in such a diverse region where we have so many different cultures and ethnic groups? I mean, is it making it? And I want to really give a shout out to Councilmember Garamella, because you know, I'm so proud. I got emotional when I found out that he's like a brother to me, and when you know, he's translating the census in 3 or 4 different languages for our community in Morrisville, which is, you know, so I often joke, I'm a West Virginian who grew up on country music, whose parents happen to be from India, but he was actually born and educated in India.
Yep.
So he's really the first Indian American elected in the region, not me. Although I did grow up on Indian food. But you know, that's got to make your jobs exciting, but also having to learn different things about different cultures, correct, Chief? And
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I don't think in the fire service world it's too awful bad. I mean, usually, regardless of what your background is, when you get into the type of emergencies that we respond to, you have the same problem, and we don't have to speak much about it. Medical side a little bit, you know, you also have some cultural differences, but we can do some things to educate and make people culturally intelligent. And I think most of the times these days, our staff is willing to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
okay,
You
we
know,
appreciate
what's
that.
interesting is, I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
No, good, you're good.
No, I mean, I think what the chief's response, like if your house is on fire, it really doesn't matter your nationality. Your house is on fire. I mean, at the end of the day, I got a call from John Wee. I'm not sure if you guys know him. He was the chairman of the, I'm still associated even after I retired because I have schools in China with the Chinese American Economic and Cultural Association. And Councilman Rao, I mean, the thing about Satish, and he's such a close friend of mine, so I'm going to be careful here, but when I think about, like, I get a phone call about once every 3 weeks from somebody from the Asian community that has, I've been dealing with the Philadelphia Police Department this past week with a gentleman who can't get his visa renewed. So I don't know if you guys know, and your audience knows, that if you have a crime happen to you and you help the police resolve the crime, they will give you a visa so you don't have to leave America. It's called a U visa. I didn't know anything about it until last week because that's when I got called about this particular issue in Philadelphia. So I've been working with the Philadelphia Police Department to get this person a visa. The thing is, our communities in Cary and Raleigh and Morrisville have citizens that have these challenges that I don't have. Like, I don't have to worry about the visa. It's not my problem. You know, I wake up every day. Chief, maybe you do or don't. I know you don't, Steve. But but to help help people of ours that we serve, and I'm sorry, I use the word serve, that's my word, that help the people we serve in getting your visa or getting a fire put out or get, police matter resolved. What a privilege we have.
Yeah.
Like, how lucky are we that we get to do this every day of our lives? And I love my 30-year career. I'm glad I'm retired now because now I get to do it for money, a lot more money. So it's refreshing. But how lucky are we to serve people? I mean, it's just a different perspective. Steve, you do it as a council member. The chief does as a firefighter. I did as a police officer. But how lucky are we get to serve these citizens that are so important to us?
My last question, and I know we got to go, but we talked about, I think this has been a great program. If you have questions for our fire chief about things in Morrisville, just email him or the administration. I'll share his email. It's on the website. Jerry McCormick is retired, but I can send you to Chief Desimates in Cary. And we want to thank all the departments, but this was really more a show about just 9/11. So
yep.
We talked about sacrifice, leadership, rebuilding, resilience. You all are leaders. And you've been leaders. What do you think is an important quality for a leader? Just one that is important.
I personally try to make doing the right thing the focus of my decision-making process. When it gets down to it, do the right thing.
Jerry?
Yeah, I think Chief Criddle has that. It's like you have to start in the first place of what's the right thing to do in the situation. And just loving people. You have to care about people. I mean, we use the word you want to use, but I use love, but you have to care about it. Clearly, Chief Criddle sees that same way. I mean, it's like your staff, the people you relate to, like the employees I currently have. I have an employee a month, and it's one employee. I think you have to tell them frequently you care about them, and that's the number one.
That's really great. Well, guys, I want to thank you so much for taking time on a Friday, on a very special day. On behalf of my family, I personally want to thank each and every firefighter and police officer out there that puts themselves in lives' way. And I want them to know how grateful we are for their service. I also want everyone out there to know that today, remember 9/11, and we will never forget 9/11 because we saw the pain drop from the heart, and that pain that would not forget, but the wisdom that we saw was in how Americans came together. And I see some kids that joined this, some high school kids. And my advice to you all is you're the leaders of the country now. You need to learn how to get along, listen, and rebuild and retool. And we're going to get through this because we're a great nation. And the flags that you see behind me in my backdrop were flags that the bravest men and women died for, defending our freedom. And I know it's easy to get down, and things are going to get tougher. They're going to get tougher. I mean, this virus may last a little longer than we thought. We're going to get to winter where it's not going to be sunny at 5 anymore. No Christmas parties, no Thanksgiving parties, no Diwali festivals. That's
no, we're going to do we're going to do that.
But anyway, God bless each of you. God bless our departments and all those who wear the uniform and defend the freedom of the United States. On that note, that's my message just as a community leader, is that we can rebuild, we can rise, and we will. And we honor 9/11. So thank you for being with us today. And I wish you both a very safe weekend. And Chief, one last question that we came in. You don't have to answer it, but maybe something you can email. People wanted to know, why do fires happen so much in California? And that we could probably spend an hour on that question. But
that's yours, Chief Criddle. It's yours.
We'll bring him back. But the fire department, our fire department's gone out to the west, I think, before to fight fires, right?
We haven't gone to California. We've done state deployments for wildland fires. We've gone west in the state, but not to California. That's a whole nother beast out there.
Yeah, well, it's just a beast, but we pray for those people out in California. It's just so bad that you can barely see the sky, the air quality. And I've heard it could be burnt, not burnt, not doing enough burns. I mean, we can bring him back. We could do another forest fires.
I don't think Chief Criddle wants to get involved in that. I'm just guessing.
I'm not a forest fire guy,
Okay.
A lot of that.
We'll bring in a national expert for that.
Yeah.
Folks, God bless the United States. Thank you. Be safe. Enjoy your weekend. And remember, today is a very special day, very sad day, but also a day where we can remember our greatness as a nation. And that we're stronger together when we're united. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to Criddle. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, good to meet you, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
See you in City Hall.